Welcome back to the channel. Today we continue our series about the Old Testament miracles. In this video we look at Noah's flood and that God always have mercy with judgment. Please remember to like and subscribe.
In the beginning God made a perfect world, a world full of life, beauty and harmony. Creation itself sang with the glory of its maker. But as generations passed, something dark began to grow in the hearts of men. What was once pure became polluted. What was once filled with praise became filled with pride, violence, and corruption. The world God had made to reflect His goodness now reflected rebellion. Humanity had turned away from its Creator. The earth was no longer a garden of peace. It had become a battlefield of sin. And yet, in the midst of all this darkness, one man still walked with God. His name was Noah. When the eyes of the Lord searched the earth for righteousness, He found it in one household, a family that still listened when He spoke, still believed when others mocked, and still obeyed when others rebelled. Noah lived in a generation that had forgotten God, but God had not forgotten Noah. The corruption of the world, Genesis 6 verses 1 to 12. The scriptures tell us that the Lord saw how great the wickedness of man had become on the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Imagine that for a moment. Every thought, every desire, every plan of mankind was bent toward evil. Violence filled the earth. The world was consumed by greed, lust, bloodshed, and pride, and the heart of God was grieved. The Creator who once said, "It is very good," now looked upon a world ruined by sin. He had given humanity freedom, but that freedom had been used to destroy. And so, with holy sorrow, God declared His judgment. "I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, for it repents me that I have made them." Yet even in His anger, mercy was not forgotten, because God never ends a story with destruction. He always leaves a door open for salvation, and that door was an ark. God's command and Noah's faith, Genesis 6 verses 13 to 22. The Lord spoke to Noah and said, "Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth." To build an ark in a world that had never seen rain, imagine the ridicule. Imagine the laughter, the scorn, the disbelief of neighbors watching this old man cut timber day after day. But Noah didn't argue. He didn't reason. He obeyed. Because obedience doesn't require understanding. It requires trust. The ark was enormous, over 130 meters long, 3 decks high, with room for every kind of creature. It was not built by shipbuilders or engineers, but by faith, one hammer stroke at a time. Noah's obedience became his sermon. Every plank of wood was a message to the world. Judgment is coming, but salvation is still available. And when the animals came led by divine hand, 2 by 2, male and female of every kind, Noah must have felt the weight of what was about to happen, because soon the door of the ark would close. And once God closed it, no one could open it again. So the flood begins, Genesis 7 verses 1 to 24. The day came. The skies darkened. And the Bible says the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Water exploded from beneath the earth, geysers, waves, storms beyond imagination. The rain poured down, not for an hour, not for a day, but for 40 days and 40 nights. The seas rose higher and higher. Villages vanished. Mountains disappeared beneath the relentless flood. All the earth was covered. Everything that had breath outside the ark perished. It is a terrible image, and yet behind the destruction was divine sorrow, not cruelty. This was not a vengeful act. It was a holy cleansing, a world being washed from the stain of sin. Inside the ark, the world must have sounded like chaos, the roar of waters, the cries of the dying, the silence that followed. And yet above it all there was peace, because God Himself had sealed them in. The same water that destroyed the wicked lifted the righteous to safety, judgment and mercy, both flowing from the same flood. The waiting. 1 year inside the ark. For months, Noah and his family lived adrift upon endless waters. The world they had known was gone. Only the horizon of water met their eyes. Day after day, the ark floated, sustained by the same hand that once formed the stars. There was no land, no sunlight breaking through for weeks. Only faith kept them steady. And then, finally, after 150 days, the Bible says God remembered Noah. Not that he had ever forgotten him, but now his time to act had come. The earth transformed, Genesis 8, verses 1 to 19. The waters began to recede. The winds blew, the rain stopped. Slowly, the tips of mountains began to appear, first the peaks, then the valleys. The ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. What a moment that must have been! After months of confinement and fear, the first sign of solid ground, the promise of a new beginning. Noah released a raven, then a dove. The dove returned with an olive leaf, a sign that life had begun again. The storm was over. The curse had been lifted. Finally, God commanded Noah to come out, to step onto a cleansed earth, reborn from the waters. Can you imagine the silence that greeted them? No sound of cities, no voices, no music, only the whisper of the wind and the memory of what once was. The earth had been remade. Everything was new. And yet nothing was the same. Noah built an altar, the first act of humanity in this new world, and offered a sacrifice to the Lord. And the Bible says, "The Lord smelled a sweet savor, and said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake." Judgment had given way to grace. The covenant of the rainbow, Genesis 9, verses 16 to 17. Then God spoke again to Noah, not with warning this time, but with promise. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Never again will all life be cut off by the waters of a flood. And as a sign of that everlasting covenant, God placed something new in the sky, something no human had ever seen before. A rainbow, a bridge of color between heaven and earth, a symbol of mercy painted upon the clouds, a promise that even after judgment, love remains. Every time the rainbow appears, God said, I will remember my covenant between me and the earth. It wasn't just a natural phenomenon, it was a spiritual signature, a divine reminder that grace always follows justice. Lessons from the flood, judgment, and mercy. The story of the flood is not just about destruction. It's about the heart of God, a heart that cannot ignore sin, yet longs to save. Noah's Ark is more than an ancient vessel. It's a symbol of salvation through obedience and faith. In the same way that the Ark was the only refuge from judgment, Christ is the only refuge from the judgment to come. Outside the Ark, there was death. Inside there was life. Outside of Christ there is condemnation. In him there is eternal safety. The flood teaches us that God's patience has a limit, but his mercy does not. That he may shake the world to its foundations, but always for the purpose of redemption. It reminds us that when sin overflows, grace rises higher. That even in the storm, those who walk with God will never be forsaken. And when we look at our own world today, the violence, corruption, and decay, it's hard not to see echoes of the days of Noah. But the message remains the same. Build your ark. Walk with God. Be ready. Because as Jesus himself said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. A world renewed. Hope after judgment. When Noah stepped out of the ark, the world was empty, yet full of possibility. The sky was clear, the air was new, the rainbow shone bright over the mountains of Ararat. It was the dawn of a second beginning, humanity's chance to start again. The flood washed away more than corruption, it washed away despair. It proved that even when the world is lost, God can still create something new. The same God who destroyed the earth also restored it. The same waters that cleansed also gave birth to a new world. That's the miracle of the flood. Judgment turned into mercy, death into life, and sorrow into covenant. The story of Noah and the flood is one of the greatest miracles ever told. A story of a world judged by water and redeemed by grace. It reminds us that our God is not only a creator but a judge, and not only a judge but a redeemer. He sees, he warns, he saves, and he renews. Noah's faith preserved his family. His obedience opened a door that would save all living things, and his worship restored the connection between heaven and earth. When you see a rainbow after the storm, remember, that's not just light through raindrops. It's the fingerprint of a faithful God, the same God who never forgets his promises. So when life feels flooded by trials, when darkness seems to cover the earth again, remember that God still has an ark, and that ark is Christ. Step inside, stay close, and you will find peace in the storm.
Thank you for watching and giving us your precious time. If this message has blessed you, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and join us in our next episode as we continue exploring the miracles of the Old Testament, where every act of God reveals His power, His justice, and His endless love.